humans are kinda mid. So I decided to isolate myself for the next 100 days in Stardew Valley, in the game. Please subscribe, enjoy. Leaving my home on day 1, I noticed I had a body temperature bar, outside temperature bar, a water bar, a food bar, and status effects. And if I wanted to survive, seeing as I couldn't leave, there was a lot to keep an eye on. I cleared some space and planted my parsnips before looking at some cool stuff to craft and headed through a teleport pad, appearing in a strange room and going off to the river section of my farm. There I found a chest with a fishing rod. How convenient. I got fishing with no food left, caught a sunfish, and lost consciousness. Having a leek for breakfast, I planted some mixed seeds, drunk an entire watering can, and got to work fishing because I was starving. Unfortunately for me, I was stuck here fishing for the entire day. In total, I ate 1 leek, 2 horseradish, 7 sunfish, 5 green algae, 4 smallmouth bass, and 1 brim, and I was still hungry. Welcome back, everybody. It's me, Nikocado Avocado, and I'm hungry once again. I snacked on some forageables, then headed back to the pad where there was a lot of places to go. This is how big my farm is. Eventually, I was caught out near a river beginning to starve, so I was naturally stuck there for the entire day. Setting out, it was really hot the next morning. Never mind. Heading up, I decided to visit the ocean because it looked like a really cool beach area, where after clearing some space, I got fishing. My parsnips were complete the next day, so I happily ate 5 entire parsnips for breakfast. I spent some time chopping a whole bunch of weeds and returned with 10 mixed seeds, planting them where my parsnips were and heading back to the lake area. There, I got fishing, and you wouldn't believe what I did for the rest of the day. Having some breakfast the next morning, I harvested more parsnips and once again got chopping weeds. Near a cliff, I noticed a cave, but unfortunately, I have the Sigma grind set and continued my work. Yeah, it was empty. There was nothing inside. Finding a mining area across the river, I got back to slashing and eventually planted over 20 seeds, significantly growing the size of my farm. Waking up the next morning, I was just feeling a little sick and it was boiling hot. Never mind. So after eating some more parsnips, I naturally got to work watering my small amount of crops. Now I'm asleep. Luckily, I was feeling better the next day, so I watered my crops and did something amazing and unprecedented. I went fishing. Midway through, I was notified that I should probably cook my food, so I started up a campfire, which did absolutely nothing. But I did notice that I could get any building I wanted on my farm. I also noticed my food bar and returned to my rod. I got back to hitting weeds the next day as I wanted to expand my farm. I planted a bunch, then headed out and realized I was out of food, crawled home, ate some parsnips, and was having some water when my food ran out again. My final hope of staying awake was this cast. If I could possibly get a fish, it would... Who on earth is this Harvey character? After watering my crops, I wanted to start crafting the new machines, which began with wood. On top of this, I could craft field snacks to keep myself awake. So I chopped, and by the end of the day, I had stayed alive and gained over 300 wood, so mathematically, today was a success. The next ingredient on my list was copper, so I headed through the portal pad and arrived at the mine. There wasn't much copper, so I didn't take long to chop at all, giving me a solid 20 ore. I then decided to head down and replenish my parsnips, but realizing I was starving, I tried to walk home, but passed out. The next day, Clint? Who are you? How did you get here? And please let my family go. A bunch of potatoes were ready today, so I ate them all and realized that the 20 ore I had gotten was just enough for 1 furnace, which was perfect as I could now smelt all of my remaining ore. Heading back to the quarry, I decided to clear a bunch of rocks to leave space for copper to spawn. Please subscribe, I'm begging you. I'm on my... After harvesting some parsnips, I was watering my crops when I got a message saying the egg festival had started. Sure, I'll just head over now, just don't worry. I then wanted to make a passive cooler, so I grabbed the materials and made it. You are supposed to put in wet wood, but who is looking? Probably Clint. Placing it down, I headed out looking for more weeds, and after some exploration, I found it. Weed heaven. Now, I know how that sounds. Arriving home, my farm was now repopulated. The cooler had given me trash, and noticing that my hunger was at 0, I got straight to work fishing, and got lucky when I got some rice shoots from a chest. I planted them, then chopped some trees on the ground, ate some field snacks, and watered my crops. I realized my solution to hunger the next day. A house upgrade so I could cook some food, which I could conveniently do from my farm. But I still needed 10,000 gold to, pay myself. So I sold some produce and got fishing for money. Unfortunately, I eat more than every person in the city of New York combined, or the equivalent of supersizing your McDonald's meal, so I ended up eating most of my profits. I got 3 potatoes the next morning, fished for a little to quench my hunger, then got to work shaking trees for seeds. I teleported away to an area with a bunch of weeds where I crafted up some field snacks and slashed splashed away, returning to my plot to plant and water. There was a woman named Marnie on my doorstep the next morning. She offered me a cat, which I named Knob. I do hope that Knob knows that if I ever get real hungry. I then realized I was real hungry and fell asleep on the porch. It was raining the next day, and after harvesting and selling a bunch of produce, I headed to the beach to gather mixed seeds. Then noticing I had no food left, I got fishing. Eating a quick little flounder increased my food a lot, but after that I only caught sardines, which gave me 5 food. You know, this would be fine if fishing it up took 5 food in the first place. Getting literally nowhere, I returned to my farmhouse and fished there before planting my seeds. After enjoying some river water for breakfast, I harvested and watered my crops, then grabbed some seeds for field snacks. I then headed back to the beach where I grinded for mixed seeds, but realizing that cauliflowers wouldn't grow in time, I decided to save them for summer. I harvested and sold a bunch of things the next morning, and realizing I was out of food, I got fishing. I promise to you, this will all end when I get my house upgrade. Hopefully. Drinking some water on day 21, I had had enough, and after planting some mixed seeds, I crafted up 2 water collectors and placed them out in the rain. Then, since fishing on rainy days was good, I took out my rod and got to work, surprisingly getting more fish than I had to eat. What a revelation. I was over halfway to the 10,000 gold I needed, and my water collectors had done absolutely nothing. I harvested and sold some crops, then realizing that my food was low, I foraged around for seeds, then got to work chopping some trees, which I did for most of the day, as I would use all of the food from the previous field snack to get the next one. Oh well. I headed to the quarry on day 23 as I needed 5 copper bars for a building I planned on constructing. Luckily, a couple of copper had spawned, so I picked them up. The next ingredient was clay, so I hoed the ground a little before realizing I was out of water. Can you guess what I did? You're wrong. I fished. Bet you didn't guess that one. Selling more things the next day, I was once again, unsurprisingly, starving, so I got fishing. Amazingly, I got a diamond from a fishing chest, which was great. What wasn't great though was the fact I literally eat so much food, I cannot fish enough to feed myself. It takes more food to fish out a sunfish than it gives me eating it. After harvesting and having a drink, I decided that fishing wasn't very sustainable as a food source, and if I was lucky enough and left the stumps, field snacks could be my way out. And by the end of the day, I was well fed with a net profit of 9 solid pieces of food. Today was a very good day. Having a sip of water, I lost the equivalent of eating 6 entire sunfish before harvesting and selling a bunch of produce, then getting to work gathering clay. When I got enough, I was running low on field snacks, so I returned to the forest area and probably evicted a couple of squirrels. I chopped trees all day on day 27 as I wanted to increase my supply of field snacks. Unfortunately, I wasn't very lucky at all with the seed drops, and after deforesting the local area, I ended up with 1 less snack than I had begun with. Day 28 was the last day of spring, and I was sad to see neither my rice nor my cauliflowers were going to grow up. Nonetheless, I headed down to the quarry to chop some copper, got distracted, and cut a bunch of grass instead, before returning to my home and smelting the ore up. I then decided to get back to chopping for a food supply going into summer. I once again ended with no net profit. It was the first of summer, so I hoed out an area and watered my crops. I then decided to do some fishing, hoping for a different catch. I got a sunfish, and upon eating it, I got sick, resulting in me falling asleep. I lost almost 1,000 gold from that. Sunfish are the bane of my existence. But with no other food source until my plants grew up, I returned to the river. Midway through, it started to heat up, and I started to lose water stupidly fast. To put some context in, I had to drink around an entire filled up watering can every in-game 20 minutes, although I was big brain and used my cooler instead. As you know, I am stuck on my farm, and there is an old man asking for me to retrieve his underpants. Day 31 was uneventful. I basically chopped trees for seeds and planted mixed seeds to expand my farm. I noticed that the stumps that I hadn't chopped due to lack of energy were still growing seeds on day 32, so I collected them all and got to work clearing the area around them to make space for more seeds. Eventually, I got back to work chopping trees, but the heat was so unbearable, I was forced to drink literal gallons of water, which would make me sick and throw up all of my food. Today was not a good day, so I was determined to make the next day a good one. I wooded all of my crops and got to work fishing, planning to collect mixed seeds with the food. Unfortunately for me, when it gets hot and you aren't drinking 3 liters of water per hour, you pass out in a matter of seconds. How did I get here? And how did 769 wood fall out of my pocket? But I was optimistic the next day as my wheat was ready for harvest. I sold it all, then collected collected all of the seeds around my stumps before crafting a canteen and slotting it into my water collector. I also increased my farm size again and ended the day with more fishing. My peppers were done the next day, so I grabbed and sold them before fishing until I had enough food to head over to my stumps. I chopped the seeds, and returning home, I had a solution to my water sickness: a filter. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough driftwood to craft one, so I went back to fishing. And after selling a bunch of things the next day, I was determined to fish until I got that driftwood. I never did. I realized on day 37 that I would have 10 grand if I weren't so gluttonous. I decided instead of getting a driftwood that day, I would explore my beach area more, grabbing a bunch of forageables and explosives from crates. Like a bunch. Like a whole. I was running down when I just became a little bit hotter and died on the spot, losing another 1,000 gold. But my forageables had done their job and I was 500 gold away from my goal. I quickly sold my produce, then decided to spend the day clearing my quarry with my newly acquired explosives. Realizing I almost died, I probably kept going, got bored, and returned to my stump farm. I finally had the 10 grand I needed, so I grabbed my wood and it didn't work because it was the luau. Disappointed, I tried my luck again at driftwood, but unfortunately came out empty-handed, other than all the fish that I caught. But finally on day 40, I ordered my house upgrade, then looked at a bunch of dishes I might make. There was none that I could. Slightly worried, I headed back to the beach and gathered seeds and forageables for the entire day. Someone was outside my home. How did you get here? I gathered a bunch of seeds, then decided since it was raining to head to the beach and collect mixed seeds, which I wouldn't have to water. Collecting a bunch of crates, I got an assortment of bombs, seeds, and more gear, massively expanding my farm. Watering my plants the next day, I had an idea. If I built a coop, upgraded it, and somehow found an egg, using the incubator, I could have livestock on my farm. So I headed to the quarry, blew it to pieces, and headed to the forest, where I spent the day chopping down trees again for wood and more seeds. My home was looking absolutely superb, but I didn't have anything to cook, so until I got a coop, I would have to live off field snacks. So I spent the entire day expanding my seed farm and gathering wood as a side product. My corn was ready the next morning, and after selling it, all I needed to do was wait until tomorrow. So I grabbed some explosives and headed to the forest, wanting to see just how many trees I could fell. They did absolutely nothing. But in other news, this area is good for seeds, but it looks pretty sad. Maybe this was an intentional metaphor about human colonization. I then went to bed. The day had finally come for a coop and a silo. I built them both up, and checking my menu, I set my sights on a coop upgrade, meaning another 10 grand. I then headed to the stumps for food, got thirsty, had a drink, decimating my food bar. And then I remembered something unfortunate. If you're hungry, you just pass out within the next 10 minutes. So having a snack the next morning, I scared away a crow, harvested and wooded my crops before placing down a scarecrow. Unfortunately for me, if you don't eat 3 hours after breakfast, you pass out. I was determined to get a water filter the next day, so I would never drink dirty water again. After collecting a whole bunch of seeds, I headed to the beach and got fishing. Amazingly, after not even that long, I actually hooked a piece of driftwood, sprinted home, and crafted it up. I then filled a canteen with dirty water, threw it in, and waited for 5 hours, and then gave up. The water was ready the next day, and upon drinking it, I had drunk it. I then decided, since I had plenty of food and water at this point, I might as well begin the grind for a big coop, notably the 10,000 gold that I needed. So I fished for the entire day, which I also did on day 49, at the lake and also at the river. This is entertainment, and I'm not gaslighting you. Now, over halfway to my big coop, I sold some produce, had a quick sip, and headed to the forest. And after collecting all of the seeds, I made the decision to expand the farm, because you know, the empire must grow. I was slowly inching closer to 10,000 gold, so after watering my crops, I headed to the lake and threw in my line. I was just 1,200 more gold off my goal, so after selling some produce, I cemented in my funds by doing some final fishing. Oh, I'm getting a bit thirsty. I'd better just go home quickly and grab my canteen. Grabbing my canteen, I noticed that because of my medical fees, I still couldn't afford my coop upgrade. Luckily, I didn't live in the US, or I'd have nothing left. But after selling my crops, I decided to visit the quarry on a whim, and noticed that iron ore had started to spawn, meaning that I might be able to get sprinkled sprinklers for the fall. I cleared out the entire area. But the next day, I finally had the 10 grand and instantly spent every single cent on the upgrade, along with my beautiful incubator. The only problem, I needed an egg, and I knew exactly how to get one. Conveniently for me, I added a mod that had the change of crates on the beach, having the chance to drop edible products, and after opening a whole bunch, I got the drop that I was waiting for. I also got wheat. Dropping it in the incubator, I fished for sunfish for the rest of the day. The reason I wanted sunfish was to cook up baked fish, but I had only caught trout and pike yesterday, so after checking on my egg, watering my crops, and collecting up some seeds, I got straight back to work fishing. I caught some sunfish, but then disaster struck. I was feeling a little thirsty. I couldn't mess this up. I had to have just a little sip. Deciding not to fish the next day, I headed to the quarry to gather iron and copper for possibly some future sprinklers. When I chopped everything there, I returned to my farm where, noticing the stupid amount of grass around, I got cutting. There was a negative to this though, as I had woken up with low health that morning. When I was just a little bit thirsty, I passed out almost instantly. The death count was getting a little out of hand, but luckily it was now the first of fall, so random heat strokes surely wouldn't happen anymore. My plan for today was very simple: expand the empire to the end of the upper island, which was a relatively small area. So I got it done pretty quickly. This whole area was providing me, and only me, so much. It was real dark the next never mind. I checked on my egg and collected a bunch of seeds from my domain before deciding that today was the day I would conquer the mighty sunfish that I needed for baked fish. But after catching a whole lot of other things, I thought that maybe they're just out of season. It was dark again the next never mind. My plan for today was simple: gather seeds to make food, head to the quarry to gather the iron, which I would use to craft bombs to expand my empire. But when I ran out of iron in the quarry to chop, I headed over to the beach in search of packages, hopefully containing bombs. Instead, I got a whole bunch of food. It was dark. Okay, I'll stop. My chicken had finally hatched on day 60, so I named it Prumbus. After putting the other egg into the incubator, I realized that I wasn't high enough mining level to craft a decent sized bomb, so I grabbed some food and got to work manually clearing out the quarry until I was exhausted. Waking up on day 61, I had some mail, and some more mail. I think this Lewis guy has a little too much time on his hands. But upon opening my crafting menu, I saw so many new machines that were available for me to craft. At least a couple of them were. Immediately, I set my sights on a smoker, which would hopefully prove to be a good food source. So I got grinding. Primarily, I needed iron, but since the quarry was the only place I could get it, and it took days to respawn, I decided to do some small chores to make life easier around my farm. I got started with this quest by beginning to clear the area opposite my great empire, although it would help if I looked at my hunger bar. I noticed the next day the stupid amount of new modded recipes I could now create, so I toasted up some toast and went on my way. I first chopped and smelted some iron before doing some fishing, so I would have some fish to smoke. Eventually the iron finished, so I grabbed it and placed my smoker in my kitchen, throwing in a tiger trout. My brand new project was another house upgrade, but I needed hardwood, so I shipped my axe off to Clint's to get an upgrade. My smoker wasn't done yet, and Lewis wasn't either, so after having some breakfast, I decided to gather some hay. Emptying my silo and replacing the hay in a chest, I headed to the place with a literal piece of grass as the icon, turning out to be a field of grass. I chopped a bunch of it, then cleared out my seed farming area. My smoker still wasn't done yet, and worse, Lewis's spam stopped Clint from mailing back my axe, so I paid for an express delivery. Now with my axe in hand, I headed to the forest where I harvested a whole bunch of blackberries up the top and chopped most of the hardwood stumps in the area. My smoker my smoker had produced a beautiful 60 hunger meal. Absolutely superb. Another chicken had also hatched, which I replaced in the incubator. Still needing a bunch more hardwood, I headed back to the forest and was genuinely surprised to see all of the hardwood stumps had respawned, so I happily got chopping. I spent the rest of the day at the lake fishing for money. I needed 20,000 gold of this money for the house upgrade, so I did the same hardwood chopping and blackberry collecting as yesterday before setting out my rod at the lake. This was basically my routine at this point. I would head to the forest, chop hardwood, there's a train, let me just head over, and get fishing for the rest of the day. On day 69, I realized that I had enough hardwood now, and I only needed gold. So I headed to the beach and got ready for a long fishing session. Unfortunately, I got thirsty, and being the complete brainlet, empty head, hollow cranium I am, drank a whole bunch of seawater. Yeah, I think I deserve this. So it was time to make some money back on day 70. Let me just quickly water my crops. Oh, I'm thirsty. Let me remind you of my room temperature IQ. Today was the day I would get some money. This was cemented by the fact my pumpkins were finally ready. I quickly sold them, then headed to the river area where I could safely enough drink the water. You wouldn't believe what I did the next day. Leave your guess in the comments below. The solution was I went fishing, and also a chicken hatched. With a bit more than 2,000 gold left to make, I was confident I could scrape together the funds in one day. So after harvesting and selling some produce, as well as clearing out the seed harvesting area, I got back to work fishing in the lake. The next morning, I missed out by 10 gold. This is certainly one of the games of all time. I quickly sold some random produce and, refusing to do any more fishing, decided instead to re-empty my silo, throw it all in a chest, and spend the day chopping grass in the fields. With finally 20 grand in my pocket, I grabbed some hardwood and ordered my upgrade, until I realized I needed 50 grand, not 20. After a lot of thinking and a lot of contemplating, I got back to work at the river, and I didn't leave this river for the next 8 days, except for the last day where I fished at the lake. But finally, on the final day of fall, I exited my home with 50,000 gold in my pocket and ordered my house upgrade. My life was now complete. I then decided that since winter was going to be tough with the goofy thing that they call temperature, that I would craft up a bunch of campfires and then place them around the place to help me warm up. I also realized that I couldn't get heaters for my coop, so I just placed in a campfire. I spent the rest of the day clearing the quarry of anything valuable. It was pristine on day 85. Other than you, how did you get here? The campfire worked well enough, and going to collect some seeds, the stumps were looking awfully fungal. Then checking my chest, I realized my ore and coal ratio was absolutely terrible, and I needed more of the black stuff. So I got to work chopping rocks. But manual labor is kinda cringe, so I just blew it up instead, and then went back to my pickaxe because I am very poor. It was damn cold on day 86, negative 12 degrees to be exact. And seeing as one fireplace didn't do the job, I placed 2 more and sat for a while watching the news. Eventually, I mustered the courage to head outside and go to my fishing spot next to a campfire and just sat there casting my rod as my limbs were probably falling off due to frostbite. My house was finally upgraded on day 87, so I can now, seeing as it was still cold, I spent the morning bringing my bed into the living area and surrounding it with fire. I then headed out into the sunny winter day to tend to my animals and gather seeds. My plan for today was to chop a bunch of trees, then use the wood to decorate my farm. Unfortunately, my eyes do not function. It was well below zero again on day 88, but seeing as my campfires didn't work, I simply crafted more. Spoiler, it didn't work. Instead, I decided to just deal with having to walk slow and get to business, as I wanted to build a stable and have a horse, because it's a horse. The first thing I needed was hardwood, so I wobbled over and chopped it all very slowly. It was snowing again on day 89, and the temperature bar was literally off the bar. And after tending to my chickens, I decided I would gather hardwood on another sunny day, and for now, I would just sit next to my campfire and fish. I've done a whole lot of fishing this video. It was finally sunny again on day 90, so after excitedly petting my chickens, I headed to the forest and got chopping seeds. You see, it was kind of late, and after chopping seeds so many times, I automatically went into chopping seed mode, and subsequently left after chopping seeds, without getting any hardwood at all. I spent the rest of the day gathering iron in the quarry. There was a man named Pierre outside my door. I had never seen him before, but I somehow knew his wife was cheating with a wizard. Also, Pam sent me mail saying she'd give me something, but then, didn't. But since today was sunny, I got to work chopping hardwood, as I had remembered this time. When I was finished, I noticed I needed more coal, so I spent the day chopping rocks in the quarry for coal, gems, and iron. It was sunny again on day 92, so I quickly grabbed the final hardwood I needed for the stable. All I needed now was 10,000 gold, so I fished for a little, then headed to the quarry and gathered gemstones. Once again, it was quite cold, but I braved the freezing temperatures and clicked D on my keyboard, moving my character in the right direction. Then, seeing as I only needed gold now, I checked the quarry, sold a gemstone, headed to the river, and huddled there fishing for the day next to my campfire. It was finally time for my stable on day 94. I placed it down, but I sensed something. Something was missing, something important that I couldn't quite pin down. It was the horse. The horse was missing. Hoping that it would spawn tomorrow, I collected some food, then spent the day clearing out debris from the lower area of my farm. Going to tend to my... I also love Knob. Realizing I had 6 chickens now and no food, I decided to finally use my kitchen to cook up some eggs. I also noticed my horse had appeared, which I named Stump after the Empire. But it was pretty hard to traverse, so I chopped some more trees before spending some time placing flooring everywhere for speed. It didn't look great at all, so instead I used stone and wood, but I don't know, I might change it later. So after tending to my animals and cooking up some eggs, I changed it. Chopping all of the wood outlining, I replaced it with stone except for the middle, which after grabbing some seeds, I extended downwards as a kind of tree farm in the future. I then decided, since my horse can't teleport, to create a long road downwards and got to work clearing and paving. It was time to expand and light up the road. I crafted up some hardwood fence and some torches, which made pretty cool light post things, which I placed all around my farm. When I ran out of hardwood, I spent the rest of the day incredibly slowly chopping all of the stumps in the forest. It was sunny on day 98, so I could work on my road south undisturbed. Chopping through thick foliage, I made it down to a staircase and continued the road over to my farm cave. And after adding some lights, it was truly becoming something to behold. I had some breakfast on day 99, then headed down to the Great Road to construct a little holiday home near my cave. I then decided that this bit of my farm kinda sucks and spent some time clearing and cleaning it up, adding some paths and lights. I then decided, since my cave had a holiday house, I might as well have my stump farm have one, so I constructed it. And finally, it was day 100. I headed down to the quarry in the morning to build a little holiday home there as well. I then tried to build another one, but I couldn't, so I ripped down my quarry one, headed to the beach, and built one there. Because, you know, it's further away. Thanks for watching. Smash subscribe and like to have your chance in the $100 million giveaway. The winner will be announced on my LinkedIn. Okay, bye. Please subscribe.